Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I'm Curiosity, and this is my jamboree. A firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. It is, of course, October, the spookiest month, and I'll be celebrating it along with you. If you prefer a quiet night in to a costume party, if you prefer gentle chills to jump scares, join me on the 31st for a live jamboree event. I'll be doing something a little different than normal, so you don't want to miss out. Tonight we spin tales of off-putting travelling companions, stalkers with technical skill, and a lucky escape. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, tune the radio to longwave 666, and let's begin. Our first story is from r/creepy encounters, posted by Suspicious Taro 7563. So I work the graveyard shift, and every morning after work I take the same bus home. A bit over a year ago, a man started to take the same bus. A man which I would not have noticed, had he not been glaring at me so obviously. I didn't pay any attention to it at first. He seemed to be an older man, and I do understand that my appearance might be weird or questionable for some older folks. Why I started to pay attention was simply because he kept staring at me so obviously, trying to make eye contact. He typically sat in the front of the bus and I in the back, but at times he just all of a sudden turned round for minutes and stared at me. At first it made me uncomfortable, especially when he started to pay attention to the stop that I'd hop off. Every time after, I guess he learned my stop, and a few stops before mine, he turned around and shamelessly stare at me. Then, about 6 months back, I was really tired after work, and since the bus ride is about 40 minutes long, I started to doze off in the back of the bus. Then all of a sudden I just got this "someone is looking at you" feeling, and opened my eyes. There I was, 6 in the morning, in the back of the bus, alone, and the man is sitting right in front of me, face turned my way. I wasn't feeling tired at all anymore, but decided it was safe to close my eyes when the man turned away from me. I dozed off for a couple of minutes and woke up just in time. I was tired and a bit out of it when I hopped to the back door. As I stood up from my seat, the man just puts his hand in front of me. I got really confused and took my other headphone off to ask, "What's up?" It became apparent that the man was not originally from my country, and his pronunciation was very stiff. I just heard the word hand. "I'm sorry, what?" I said, startled. He asked me to take his hand. Like I said, I was really out of it, so I just looked him dead in the eye and blurted, "No," in confusion, and walked right past him. After that encounter, he started to come and sit closer to me instead of sitting in the front of the bus. Even when I felt eyes on me every single time, I just kept telling myself, it's all good. I have quite bad anxiety, and sometimes tend to overthink things, but decided that this was not one of those cases. Last week the man came to the bus, like every morning, and sat on the other side of the aisle from me. I saw from the corner of my eye him leaning towards me, so I took my headphone out and gave him the "what" look. He said something I couldn't understand, and it ended with, I said good morning. "Morning," I nodded politely and went on with my business. The whole time I could see him just staring at me, and all of a sudden I felt a bit more uneasy, even though I'd already started to not care about the situation. This morning, like every other, I hopped on the bus, just scrolling my phone, when, after a while, I saw legs appear in my vision. I looked up, and there he was. Looking at my backpack, I'd placed it on the seat next to me. He smiled and said good morning. Before I got a chance to say anything, he sat right in front of me, and leaned closer. From a distance I would have said the man looked to be in his late 60s, but from a closer look I'd say late 50s. He looked like a grandpa, I don't know how else to put it. A smiling, bit creepy grandpa. "How are you?" Politely I told him I'm good, not engaging in conversation so he'd understand to leave. He mumbled something and glared at me in this weird way. I didn't say anything, just looked at my phone. And then he goes, Are you taken? In these types of situations, I always say yes, so I nodded. Ah, too bad, he smirked. I thought you were, but I had to ask. Did you? Really? He tells me it's sad that he doesn't have anybody to squeeze. He asks me how long I've been taken. Do I work in a kindergarten or at a grocery store? Neither, I reply. He asks me where do I work then? What time my shift starts? At this point, instead of just feeling uneasy, I get irritated. It's 6 a.m, and a man twice my age who's been glaring at me for a year keeps asking me question after question. All of a sudden, he stood up and sat right behind me. Thinking he finally got the hint, I put my headphone back in, just to take it off a few minutes later because he leans closer. So what year were you born? I told him the year I was born, so he nodded and leaned back. So you are that young. He sat behind me for about 10 minutes before he once again just stood up and went to sit in front of the vehicle, every now and then just turning to look at me. This isn't scary, but just very uncomfortable. I think I might need to change bus. Yes, OP, it sounds like your interested stranger is getting more bold. Maybe waiting for the next bus wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But for what it's worth, I'm really sorry that the actions of one creepy man is forcing you to change your whole morning routine. Our next story was shared by DeathDarknessandFire. This was the early 2000s. A lady told me about her laptop always draining the battery. The computer needed other things done to it. When I went to see her, the ex-boyfriend called her and asked if she was alone. Who's there? Accusing her of lies, cheating, and sleeping with other men. She hung up on him and seemed a bit rattled. She wanted to know if he could see through her camera on the computer. I checked and also disabled it because she never used it. I didn't see anything. I opened it up to clean and check the battery, and noticed this small device soldered to the battery terminals. It had a slim card in it. I looked up the model, and it's a tracking device. After she saw what I found out, all her paranoia flooded out. She kept wondering how he knew where she was at all times, following her. He knew of conversations she'd had with friends and family. I checked her phone handset. A little black device, but it was a short-range recorder. At this point, I'm thinking this is a prank being played on me by some TV show. But her fear was genuine. I opened the alarm system box. There was a DVR in there linked to a camera out the front she didn't even know about. The camera was hidden in a fake painted brick. I said she should call the police about this, and that's just it. He is the police. The DVR had a hard drive in it. I plugged a screen and mouse into it. All of this was expensive for 2003. It had been installed 2 weeks ago, and she broke up with him 4 months ago. The odd part was they were only together for 1 month. He never lived there, only visited. On the camera footage was him walking by several times at night. We followed a path of balding grass to a small garden shed she'd not been in since she moved there. He'd been living in there and outfitted the interior. He'd run an Ethernet cable into the house, power, microwave, and lots of caravan parts, a bed, a TV, a man cave, even a toilet which was functional because the shed was right next to the septic tank. He was in the stages of getting running water via a hose hidden under the house to the shed. OP added in the comments that the police were called, and all the surveillance equipment was removed. Apparently, the client never heard from her intrusive ex again. Apparently, though, this was all stopped just in time, because the police found a DVR cable running to the bathroom, where thankfully no camera had been put in. Yet. Wherever this woman is now, I hope she's secure, and still free of her stalking ex. Our last story was shared by the enigmatically named Annoying-Slut. I had a strange interaction back in 2018. I didn't think too much of it until my therapist told me that the city we're in, Chicago, is a hub for human trafficking, and she said it sounded like that type of situation. I was studying at a university in a wealthy neighborhood of Chicago. The campus is intentionally designed to fit right into the city, so it doesn't look or feel like a traditional college campus. It's extremely accessible to anyone, and no one would really look out of place. I was also dealing with substance use disorder, and I looked kinda like a zombie compared to my healthier self now. But definitely still like a college student, and not like a homeless drug addict, which you can find plenty of all over the streets of Chicago. This is to say, I don't think I appeared particularly vulnerable or like someone who would be a typical victim of trafficking. I was ingesting certain powders at a friend's place. Once he managed to let me know it was time to go home, I decided to walk, since it was about 15 minutes back to my apartment, and most of it would be walking along campus on a major, well-lit street. It was still summer, before school started, so it was unusually quiet despite it being only around 1 a.m. The city was doing work on a small patch of sidewalk on the aforementioned street right outside the quad. It was dug up, but not super obstructive, and only on 1 or 2 squares of sidewalk. One would just have to walk around it, slightly into the street, to entirely avoid it. But frequently, when there was heavier foot traffic, we would just go around the caution sign and barriers to walk through it. As I was walking, I noticed there was a plain tan-coloured van sitting in the gas station across the street, with the headlights turned off. Think an old work van, no windows for any visibility into the back. As soon as I approached the part of the sidewalk that was dug up, the van peeled out of the gas station and across all lanes of traffic, so fast that I immediately noticed because of how jarring it was. I was standing right in front of the dug-up sidewalk when the van pulled up next to me with the window down. There was a man and woman up front. The woman yelled something like, "Help, do you speak English?" Looking back, it's very strange. They wouldn't just assume I spoke English. I'm in a very white part of an American city. I'm half Middle Eastern, but Anglo-looking enough that people usually just assume that's what I am. I was still kinda high, which always makes me way too chatty and comfortable around literally anyone. So naturally, I took a couple of steps towards the van without giving it a second thought. Until I did. I thought these people might be trying to rob me, so I abruptly stopped. I stood frozen for maybe 20 seconds, conflicted as hell since I really wanted to talk to them, but I had my MacBook and a good amount of drugs in my backpack that I would probably have to lose if the interaction went south. I decided I didn't want to risk losing my overpriced shit. After me just standing there with all of us staring at each other and them appearing to be some emotion between excited and anticipatory, I casually turned back to the direction of my apartment and walked at the same speed as before, through the dug-up sidewalk, avoiding walking alongside the van on the street to continue my way home. Once I began walking away, they sped off just as fast as they pulled up to me, with the woman giving me a very dirty look. But instead of returning to their spot in the gas station, they ran a red light to turn left and completely fled the immediate area. I'm obviously not sure what their actual intentions were, but I think about this interaction frequently and how scary it was that drugs impaired my judgment so much that the only thing that might have kept this story from having a more tragic ending is that I didn't want to lose some expensive stuff, and not that I valued my own safety. The sun is rising, and the moths are clocking out just in time to greet the butterflies. The jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to everyone who sent in stories or gave me permission to narrate theirs. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts about the stories I've narrated, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to sing a little song to help you remember how to click a like button. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description below, and I would love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then, may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.